UFC 285, Jones versus Gane is this weekend, and I'm going to go through the entire card, starting with the early prelims, ending with the main events, giving my prediction and breakdown for every single fight on the card, starting with the early prelim opener of Loik Radzhabov versus Esteban Robivics. This was a very short notice bout put together. Esteban Robivics was supposed to be taking on someone else, and I believe it was Kamwela Kirk, and Loik Radzhabov is stepping in on short notice to take on Robivics, and I think he's going to win on short notice as well. He's very experienced. He's been at PFL. He's fought a bunch of great opponents, and Esteban Robivics hasn't really fought too many great opponents in his career. He had a couple of good wins here and there, but his recent win before he got onto the Contender Series was against a 6-5 opponent. Fair enough, he got a first round KO, but still, it's a 6-5 opponent. I just don't see him finishing a Radzhabov, in all honesty. I really don't see him finishing a Radzhabov. He's a finisher. Every single fight he's had has been by way of finish. He's won every fight by way of finish. And I don't see him finishing Radzhabov, who couldn't be finished by Rashid Magomedov, couldn't be finished by Islam Mamedov, who was 18-1. He went to a majority draw with him. Couldn't be finished and beat Chris Wade in the PFL. Beat Chris Wade in the PFL. Chris Wade is very, very underrated in the PFL, and he has a win over him. Beat Aliev, who was 20-6. Lost to Alex Martinez in one point in his career, but came back and won the rematch against him in the next PFL season in 2021. I just don't see him losing this one by finish, and if he doesn't lose it by finish, I can definitely see him winning a decision here over Robivics. Now, Robivics, if he wins, this is going to be a very impressive win. I was kind of thinking maybe I should pick Robivics here because it is short notice for Radzhabov, but I'm still going to pick Radzhabov to win. He's coming off of an amazing win. Guillotine over Zach Zane, who was 15-9, not the best of opponents. Got a guillotine win there in the first round. That was only a month and a half ago. I'm assuming he's still going to be in somewhat fight shape. He's definitely healthy to even take this fight in the first place. Thinking he can even make weight at 155. He's got to be in shape. So I think he's going to get this one done. So I'm looking forward to it. I reckon he will win this fight by decision. Plus, Esteban Robivics, Thomas Paul shouldn't have been the guy from the UK they called up to the Contender Series. I have no idea why he was. Maybe he was just one of them that wasn't injured at the time. But he was landing a bunch of good shots on Robivics on his chin in the first round in that fight. A bunch of good overhand rights. And then Robivics really badly groin shotted him in the first round if you rewatch that Contender Series bout. And then he got the finish as Thomas Paul came rushing in again. So pinch of salt with that win. I'm going to go with Radzhabov getting a decision win here over Robivics. 29-28. We move on. Up the card, Farid Basharat versus Damon Blackshear. I'm going to go with Farid Basharat here. Damon Blackshear is good. He's dangerous. He's a finisher, but this one of the Basharat bros. You know what I mean? You can't go against the Basharats. That's the problem that I'm seeing here. I'm not going to trust in him to beat a Basharat. He lost to Danny Sabatello, not a bad loss. Sabatini, not a bad loss. Chris Matinho, not the best loss to have. Damon Blackshear lost to a Keith Richardson, who was 16-9. But Damon Blackshear has been very active recently in his career. He fought 4 times in 2021 after losing to Sabatello at the start of that year. Of course, you all know who Danny Sabatello is. And he had strung together some really good wins. But I just don't think he beats Basharat, man. If he couldn't beat Yusuf Salau, I don't think he beats Farid Basharat. I really don't think he can. Farid Basharat, very talented, very crisp, technical in all areas on the Contender Series. I think he's going to win this fight by a 29-28 decision. Maybe Damon Blackshear gives him some kind of problem, but I don't think he's going to win this fight. I think it's going to be smooth sailing for the most part for Farid, so I'll go 30-27 or 29-28 Farid Basharat. Very, very talented. Hasn't yet fought the best of competition, but I think if he's anything like his brother, I think he'll rise to the occasion here and get this one done. Decent opponent on the Contender Series. Beat them pretty convincingly, so I'm going to trust in Basharat to win. He looked crisp as hell on the Contender Series. We move on. Up the card, Jessica Penne versus Tabatha Ricci. I'm going to trust in Tabatha Ricci. Jessica Penne is 40 years of age. We move on. Up the card. No, I'm joking. It's not the only reason why I'm picking against her, but not the best, is it? 40 years of age. Emily Ducote was a very good fighter on the come-up at the time, so fair enough to her, you know. But Emily Ducote also had a bunch of losses. She was very good, but she's lost a lot of fights on the regional career, early on in the regional career, of course, but it's not like she was this undefeated monster coming into the UFC. She just sort of pieced together a couple of good wins. So I was thinking to myself, okay, Emily Ducote is probably going to beat Jessica Penne. Since then, she went on to lose to Angela Hill, but I think that Tabatha Ricci's going to be able to get down Juliana, whatever her name is, Jessica Penne. I reckon she's going to be able to get down Jessica Penne and sort of like ride out top position. I think that's how she wins. I know that a lot of time the judging doesn't really favour people having top position, but in women's MMA, I feel like they do favour top position a lot more and don't really look at damage too much. So I'm going to side with Tabatha Ricci winning a split decision here. With control time, staying on top. She was able to stay out of danger against Polyana Viana, who's quite a good fighter herself. So I think at strawweight we're gonna see Ricci get this one done by decision, split decision. It's tough to say, but I'll side with the younger woman who's got more to improve on. And a little bit of a grappling advantage, I would say. We move on. Up the card, Mana Martinez versus Cameron Saaiman. I'm going to go with Cameron Saaiman here. Mana Martinez is good. He's crispy. He's got decent boxing. I just think he's a little bit limited, and I think that Cameron Saaiman can take this fight in a few different places if he wants to. The last guy he took on, Cameron Saaiman was Stephen Kozlow, who was a very, very good grappler. Took the fight on a little bit of a short notice fight, don't get me wrong, and he was originally supposed to be taking on Ronnie Lawrence, so I thought he might have lost to Ronnie Lawrence in his debut. But he's very good. He's very, very good. Very crisp, has an amateur career, training under Dricus du Plessis and his whole team. Beat a grappling guy in Stephen Kozlow in his last fight and out-grappled him, out-scrambled him. Ended up back on top after some dangerous situations. Mana Martinez is good. He actually fought Ronnie Lawrence and I believe clipped him in the third round, but was getting out-grappled pretty unanimously before that. Beat Guido Canetti, but the Brandon Davis fight, I don't think Brandon Davis is that level of a prospect like Cameron Saaiman at this point. And, you know, he only really won the Brandon Davis fight because Davis got dropped at the end of one of the rounds. And if he didn't get that dropping happen to him, he would have won that fight by decision. So I'm gonna trust in Cameron Saaiman, the prospect, to have more ways to win than Mana Martinez here and to mix it up against him. And I think he's very composed, very good stand-up, very good scrambles, very good clinch work, very good grappling. I just think he's got a lot in his favour here in this matchup. And if he's that good already, 22, like at this age, he's going to be rapidly improving. So now that he's got the octagon jitters off of him, he's being active. He fought in December, now he's fighting in March. I think he gets this one done by decision, 29-28. We move on. Up the card, Ian Machado Garry versus Kenan Song Kenan. I'm going to go with Ian Machado Garry, of course, the simp. I'm going to go with him winning this one over Song Kenan. I reckon he'll get a KO as well, to be honest with you. Song Kenan, best days behind him. He's not bad. When you look at his UFC record, you'll see, oh, he's a 4-2 UFC fighter. Like, he's won more than he's lost in the UFC, and he's lost to Alex Morono and Max Griffin, so he's not losing to schmucks in the UFC. However, he's been very inactive over his career. Early on, he was quite a bit active, but, I mean, he's had 2 fights since August of 2019, so September 2019. It hasn't really been fighting too often, and even the people that he beat in the UFC, Callum Potter, chinless. You know what I mean? We know that about Callum Potter. Derek Krantz, you know what I mean? It's just not a good opponent, really. Only got into the UFC because he impressed on Dana White's looking for a fight, and they gave him a chance against Luque in Beijing on short notice. Hector Aldana was 4-0 in the UFC when he beat him. Bobby Nash, 8-3. Like, these aren't the creme de la creme. You know what I mean? And he's lost a bunch of times outside the UFC, including to Israel Adesanya, no less, with a head kick. So, he's been KO'd a few times in his career. His last fight was his 3rd KO loss in his career. Ian Garry's hands are looking real crispy recently. He looked amazing in his last fight and really looked like he came into his own. He took a good amount of time off since his last fight. I like how Ian Garry's going about his career. I think he's going to find this one. I think he's going to get this one done. He's got a bit of a reach advantage, 2.5 inches of reach. I think he'll find it. You know, training at Killcliff, Sanford. I think he'll make massive improvements. I mean, he's in training camp with Shavkat Rakhmonov for this fight camp, so I think that's going to be a massive benefit to his grappling if he does want to go in that direction. I think he can try and out-grapple Kenan Song. I think he'll get this one done by TKO, though, over Kenan Song. I can see him getting it done that way. So I'm going to score a KO win, or predict a KO win, for Ian Garry over Kenan Song. We move on. Up the card, Julian Marquez versus Marc-Andre Barriault. I'm going to go with Marc-Andre Barriault. Julian Marquez is dangerous, but he's wild, and I think you have to be a bit more technical to catch a guy like Marc-Andre Barriault. He seems to do well against wild opponents. Chidi Njokuani was able to KO him with like a crispy overhand in the first round that was so clean. But you watch him against wild opponents like Jordan Wright, Dauchul Ngiambula, Abu Azaitar. He makes a career out of beating these guys over a decision. You know what I mean? And you see him against Anthony Hernandez. It was just a terrible fight for him. He got out-grappled the entire time. I don't see Julian Marquez being able to push that kind of pace. To be honest with you, I think Julian Marquez, I don't know what it is with him. A little bit part-time here. Already trying to, you know, a couple wins in the UFC, a call out of Miley Cyrus, and he's trying to set up this podcast for himself and that podcast for himself. Like, coming off a brutal KO loss as well, let's not forget. So I don't think he's going to be too confident swinging in the pocket in the future. Hasn't been in there in a while. I'm going to go with Marc-Andre Barriault. I'm going to side with Marc-Andre Barriault. Not to mention he was losing to Maki Pitolo before latching up the sub. A win over Darren Stewart don't really look that good anymore. Split decision loss to Alessio De Chirico don't look too good. Sam Alvey win. Welcome to the club. Unless you're Ryan Spann, I guess. But I'm going to go with Marc-Andre Barriault being able to grind out a decision win here. 29-28 as well, I think. A very close decision win for Marc-Andre Barriault based on the last 2 rounds. We move on. Up the card, Viviane Araujo versus Amanda Ribas. I'm going to go with Amanda Ribas over Viviane Araujo. I think she looked good against Katlyn Chookagian. There's an argument that she should win that fight, although I don't think it's really the case. I don't think she did win the fight. Viviane Araujo's very good, but I think Amanda Ribas has a lot more potential in the future of her career, whereas Viviane Araujo, 36 years of age, getting to that point where you start dipping off a little bit. You know, Amanda Ribas, 29 years old, still a bunch to improve on, training at American Top Team. I just feel like Amanda Ribas has more to improve on between fights. Viviane Araujo is good, though. She is good, but I'm going to side with Amanda Ribas. I think she's got a finishing potential advantage with submissions. I think her chin holds up better at 115 or 125, in the flyweight division. I reckon she gets this one done. Yeah. I was a big fan of her performance against Chookagian in her first fight back up in the flyweight division. So, yeah, I think now that she's settled into this division a bit more, I think she'll do a lot better here, and I think she'll get a win over Araujo by, again, a close 29-28 decision. I think that's something I'm going to be calling out a lot of in this card. We move on. Up the card, Derek Brunson versus Dricus du Plessis. I'm going to go with Dricus du Plessis with his guillotine. I'm going with guillotine win for Dricus du Plessis. I know, but he has a lot of them, and I've been waiting for one of them to cash. And Brunson seems like the type of guy, don't get me wrong, mate. Let me know if I'm wrong or not. Brunson seems like the guy who will be stumbling in after getting cracked on the feet, shooting for panic takedowns, and getting latched up by that Dricus du Plessis guillotine. And I know that he slowed down against Darren Till, but he went for like a 10-8 in the first round. Crazy high pace in that fight. I do worry about him sometimes because he does look a little bit jellied on the feet, but I don't think Brunson has that ability to KO people anymore the same way he used to earlier in his career. He seems a little bit less brave on the feet, less aggressive on the feet, putting a bit less power into his shots. He has got a really good offensive grappling game, but I think the grappling of Dricus du Plessis is one of his most underrated parts of his game. Everyone saw him as a striker, whereas I saw him as a good grappler, and I said that's why he would beat Darren Till, because he has that grappling ability. Yeah, I'm going to side with Dricus du Plessis again here. Very underrated grappling. I think that's what Derek Brunson's going to really not do too well under the condition of. Like, I think he's going to think, oh, I'm shooting in, I'm winning, I'm wrestling right now, and I'm staying out of the way of this knockout puncher. But I think that's going to fall into Dricus du Plessis' game, and I think I can see Dricus latching up a guillotine, reversing Brunson, trying to end up on top, scrambling with him, landing damaging shots in the middle of it all. I think he's just more damaging than Brunson in a lot of their scrambles that they're going to have. And also, you got to consider Brunson is coming off an injury. He was supposed to fight Jack Hermansson, got injured, had to postpone a fight. Now he's fighting Dricus du Plessis. This is going to be a year and 1 month out for Derek Brunson. You know, we were seeing a moment with Derek Brunson earlier on in like 2020 to 2022 where he was so active and he was doing good. Like, he fought Shabazian in August, came back in March, beat Kevin Holland, came back after that, beat Darren Till. That even got postponed because of Darren Till's injury. He was then supposed to fight Cannonier. That got a little bit postponed, but he fought him in February 2022. I just see him not really being able to take the damage off of du Plessis. If both of them land big shots, Brunson's the one going down. And if they end up grappling, I think that du Plessis will surprise a lot of people with his jiu-jitsu. He goes for legs, he goes for arms, he goes for guillotines and uses them to flip people over and reverse and take mount. I think if he grapples, I think he'll have a lot of success. And I think he will beat Derek Brunson by second round finish is what I'm going to go for here for Dricus du Plessis. We move on up the card to another fight, which is Cody Garbrandt versus Trevin Jones. I'm going with Trevin Jones over Cody Garbrandt. I'm taking the underdog of Trevin Jones. I just can't trust Garbrandt anymore. I want him to win. Maybe I'm covering for myself here. I can't pick him to win and just watch him lose again. You know what I mean? I know Trevin Jones is 13-9, and it's not a good-looking record. But Javid Basharat, Raoni Barcelos, Sadyukub Rakhmonov, Garbrandt's not going to be shooting takedowns on him. Stand-up fight, and you look at the wins. Smacked up, he tested positive for the old Mary Jane, the old Devil's Lettuce against Timur Valiev. So it's a no contest, but in reality, we know what happened. He was getting beaten up, but then he caught Timur Valiev on the chin. He caught him on the chin in an exchange and turned the fight around and got the win. He was doing okay against Batista. Batista was kind of outstriking him. Catches Batista on the chin with the lead uppercut. You know what I mean? I can see Garbrandt doing all right and then getting caught on the chin by Trevin Jones, who has a lot of finishes by KO in that very same way of catching people when they're not expecting it. So I think he also did pretty good against Javid Basharat as well. I'm just going to check the stats real quick here. But I think he held up pretty well in the stats to Javid Basharat and actually held his own in a lot of those rounds. I'm just going to check it right now. Trevin Jones here. Javid Basharat, yeah, he held up, 31-18 in the first to Basharat, not too bad. But then, 27-20, 31-24. It's not like he was outclassing Trevin Jones the entire time. Like, Jones even got given a round by one of the judges. I imagine the third round or the second. But, yeah, he sort of held his own every round, stayed in there, stayed competitive, but just wasn't really doing enough. But he was always dangerous. I just think Basharat's on a different level of striking than Garbrandt, and Garbrandt just swings. And if he lands, he lands. Fair enough. And if he wins, respect to him. But there's just been so many KO losses, and he's pulled out of a few fights now. He's been trying to get a fight made. Hasn't fought since December of 2021. He's going to be inactive. I've got to side with Trevin Jones getting this win by KO. So I'm going to pick the upset here. We move on to another fight up the card, which is Jamie Pickett versus Bo Nickel on the main card. This is a big one. I'm going with Bo Nickel, of course. I think Jamie Pickett's going to be dangerous, but you got to go Bo Nickel here, I think, over Jamie Pickett. There's just not much in Jamie Pickett's game other than, I guess, athleticism to say that, you can trust him winning this one and pick him to win in any way. Like, if he was like but he's dangerous, though. You know what I mean? But, I know Bo Nickel's hyped, but this guy's got a couple good wins, but Jamie Pickett doesn't have those good wins. That's the problem in Jamie Pickett's game. He doesn't have those good wins, Joseph Holmes was a bit iffy coming into the UFC, and he took him to a decision. Laureano Strapoli, he just held him against a cage and was the bigger opponent to a decision. It just wasn't too impressive there either. Beat Jonathan Patti on the Contender Series, got a finish there, well done. But other than that, lost twice on the Contender Series before, okay? Won his third attempt on the Contender Series. But other than that, got smashed up by Tafon and Chukwi for 3 straight rounds. Didn't stand a chance against him. Beaten by Jordan Wright. That's a shame. That's a real shame. Then you got Dorcas beat him. Dorcas got a win over someone who looks like Jamie Pickett, if you know what I'm saying. Okay? Usually they're kryptonite, the Dorcas bros. All I'm going to say. He denied the kryptonite to beat Jamie Pickett. That's how bad Pickett is. Then you got Tallulah beating him as well. And Tallulah just got out-grappled easily. Out-grappled easily by Park Yun-Yong. Dorcas out-grappled him. Took him down, subbed him. Took him down 3 times in the first round. Got to go Bo Nickel here. I think he's going to go out there, get the takedown, and get the sub. I think that's what he's going to do. Throw a couple hands. I think what he should do, though, if he's smart, back up early on. Make Pickett go first on him. Be very patient. Don't go across and pressure, because Pickett might be waiting for a jump near or something along those lines. Uppercut, who knows. But I think what he should do is back up first. See what Pickett does. Back up first. Then it's harder for Pickett to time that flying knee and expect the takedown to be coming. So back up. Maybe bolt in. I don't think Pickett's going to get a first round KO on him. So throw a couple feints on the outside. Back up. Circle round. Touch your nose a bit. Move. You know what I mean? And then boom. Shooting for the double leg. I think he finds the takedown on Pickett and gets a first round submission with a rear naked choke. So, yeah, I've got Bo Nickel winning this one. We move on. Mateusz Gamrot versus Jarlin Turner. I've got to go with Mateusz Gamrot here over Jarlin Turner purely because Jarlin Turner, he's very good and he is a good underdog to pick here as well because this is a dangerous fight for him. This is a dangerous fight for Gamrot, I mean, as well. Like, just in general, a very, very dangerous matchup for both of them. But he lost to Matt Frevola, man. And he got out-grappled in that fight. And he got controlled on the ground. And that wasn't... I know Matt Frevola's actually not too bad when you think about it. But it was like a unanimous 30-27 decision for Matt Frevola. You know? Out every round. Now, fair enough. Maybe Turner should have won one of those rounds. But Matt Frevola just grinded him up, took him down, held him against the cage, tried to take him down again. Like, he failed a few times, but he also made it work for him, had a few submission attempts, hit reversals on Jarlin Turner. I think if Gamrot doesn't just shoot in with his head on the outside and get guillotined early on, and doesn't play around on the feet too much, I think he can just play the drag game against Jarlin Turner, and if he keeps doing that for a long enough time, I think that Jarlin Turner's going to start to slow down. His finishing ability is going to start to fade a little bit. Maybe he'll start jumping submissions, but there's a bit slippery going on, and you know, Mateusz Gamrot slips out of a few of them and ends up on top and starts landing some shots. I think Gamrot's going to get this one done using his grappling to a 30-27 unanimous decision. I think Jarlin Turner's massively improved recently, but I also know Jarlin Turner has been taking on strikers recently. Brad Riddell, Jamie Malarkey, Uros Medic, Brock Weaver. Like, Brock Weaver, hello? Took him to the second round. Brock Weaver is hot garbage. Absolute straight garbage is what Brock Weaver is. And Jarlin Turner took him to the second round. And Brock Weaver took him down in that fight. I know he got reversed and Jarlin Turner used a sub, got his own takedown and stuff like that, but there's a game plan to beat Jarlin Turner, and if Gamrot's smart enough, which I think is why he took this fight on short notice, even though it's so dangerous, I think he knows he can implement that game plan and get this win over Jarlin Turner. There's also a look at the Malarkey fight. Malarkey got a takedown on him. Spent 1 minute and 30 seconds on top of Jarlin Turner in the first round. It's just there's a game plan. You know what I mean? There's a game plan there, and Gamrot's that guy who can implement that game plan. If Jarlin Turner wins this, massively impressive. He's a problem for every lightweight in the division. I actually think he probably beats Gaethje right now. No joke. I think he does. I give him that respect, but Gamrot's got that game plan here. And Jarlin Turner was preparing for a striker in Dan Hooker. They ain't going to shoot takedowns on him. And now he's got Gamrot. If Gamrot's in shape, he gets it done. 30-27. We move on. Up the card, Jeff Neal versus Shavkat Rakhmonov. I'm going to go with Shavkat Rakhmonov, I do not agree that he should be a 6-1 favourite here. You got to stop doing that, odds makers, okay? Because it makes me want to pick Jeff Neal, and I was going to pick Jeff Neal. But nah, I've got to go Shavkat. Jeff Neal, he's had a couple good performances, and he looked good against like an older version or a younger version of Belal Muhammad before Belal Muhammad learned how to do push-ups and suddenly got in really crazy good shape. Losing to Neal Magny is tough. It's really tough, man. And I know he lost to Wonderboy before that and took a whole bunch of damage in that fight, but losing to Neal Magny is just tough, man. It's really, really tough to unsee that happening to you. I know Magny was putting the pace on him and pushing him up against the cage, and he honestly didn't spend a lot of time on top position. In fact, Neal Magny did a lot of his work in that fight, outstriking Jeff Neal on the feet. Like, it was a pretty close fight, in all honesty, in the first 2 rounds, but Magny did what he needed to do in those rounds to secure himself the win. But I think Jeff Neal's going to be a little bit gun-shy here. You know what I mean? A little bit gun-shy. Shavkat, you know Shavkat wants to take him down. And when you put Jeff Neal in there with a guy who he knows is going to strike with him and stay in the pocket with him, he's going to win those fights. You know what I mean? This was like the Mike Perry thing. Oh, like Mike Perry found out real quick. Like, you don't scrap in the inside with Jeff Neal because he just messed up Mike Perry immediately. But the split decision to Ponzinibbio. Morono was just beating Ponzinibbio until getting caught in the 3rd round. Jeff Neal split decision. Like, there's just... You know, Morono dropped Ponzinibbio twice in those early 2 rounds. And Jeff Neal didn't have those moments against him. You know? He didn't have those moments against him. That's why I'm concerned. That's why I'm just a little bit concerned for this matchup for him. So, I'm definitely going to be siding with Shavkat Rakhmonov. I think he can, instead of shooting for double legs and single legs, because Jeff Neal is so strong in his lower half of his body, I think he should probably try and sort of tall man him up against the clinch and go for inside-outside trips, which he can do. But yeah, I'm definitely going to side with Shavkat Rakhmonov here. Wild on the feet as well, so I think that's going to add to Jeff Neal being a bit gun-shy. Can Jeff Neal find the KO blow? Maybe he can find the KO blow. I'm not denying that there's a chance of that, but to bet on that at welterweight, one-shot KO is tough to say when you can't do that to Santiago Ponzinibbio. That's the concern that I'm running into there, you know? And even Ponzinibbio got a takedown on him at the end of one of the rounds, so I'm gonna side with Shavkat. Even on the feet, if they strike for 3 rounds, I think Shavkat's style might work against him as well. And also, little thing to sprinkle on top of all this prediction that I'm doing, Jeff Neal got injured in the middle of training camp, had to postpone the fight. They were supposed to fight in January at the first card back of the year. Jeff Neal got injured in training camp. They had to postpone the fight until now. That's a part of it. Shavkat hasn't been injured that we know of, but we know Jeff Neal has been injured. And he's been out of training camp for a few weeks and had to restart it again. So it's just another thing that sort of doesn't really add into Jeff Neal's favour whatsoever. We move on up the card to another fight, which is Valentina Shevchenko versus Alexa Grasso. I'm going to go with Valentina Shevchenko here. I think Shevchenko, there's a thing about her where maybe she looked at her division and thought, this is going to be so easy forever. I need to like maybe take a bit of time off and not really work as hard. But I think recently seeing a lot of the prospects rising up in the women's flyweight division, I think she's sort of going to get back to work, if you know what I'm saying. She's going to really start putting in the effort again, because I feel like there's like she's starting to feel them breathing down her neck a little bit, because there's a ton of pressure right now in that division. I just don't trust Alexa Grasso. She's got good boxing, but the kicks are where I think Shevchenko is going to have a lot of success here. You know, Alexa Grasso did good against Viviane Araujo, but it's Viviane Araujo. You know, it's not Valentina Shevchenko. She's not going to be able to kick the same way that Valentina Shevchenko does. It might be a good underdog pick, but I think the underdog picks against Valentina Shevchenko are on the horizon. A Taylor Santos rematch, an Erin Blanchfield, one of these types of matchups where they can just sort of ground her out on the floor and have superior grappling to her. Maybe then they'll have a chance at winning, and maybe then I'll pick someone to beat her, but I don't think it's like a boxer in Alexa Grasso. Do I think she drops? Valentina Shevchenko? No, I don't think she does. And also, Alexa Grasso's submission skills, they seem to be very opportunistic rather than setups while they're on the ground, if you know what I mean. Like, Macy Barber and her went to a decision, 29-28 to Alexa Grasso, and she won that fight. She won the first 2 rounds of that fight, but Macy Barber won the 3rd round of that fight and got a couple of takedowns off on her, so I still think there's a chance for Shevchenko to work some of her top game on Alexa Grasso as well. I just think the kicks are going to be open. You know what I mean? Viviane Araujo threw no kicks against Alexa Grasso and boxed with her for 5 rounds and made it very close in the last 3 rounds of that fight. So I think that Shevchenko can, 1, box with Grasso, make it close at least, or win, purely based on that. But I think the kicks are going to be the difference maker here because Grasso don't really throw too many of them. So I'm siding with Shevchenko. We move on to the main event. Jon Jones versus Ciryl Gane. Will the curse of my main event picks live on? I'm going with Ciryl Gane to upset Jon Jones. I'm going with Ciryl Gane to upset Jon Jones. Let me tell you something. I was watching Countdown, and I was like, man, I'm hyped up for UFC 285. They are only showing highlights of Jones from, like, a decade ago. Like, I can't. And every time I've been looking around like, right, let me see what this guy thinks about this matchup. What does this person think about this matchup? And I keep seeing them, like, they bring up Jon Jones and they go, man, what he did to Lyoto Machida, it's not that time anymore, man. It's not that time anymore. That's all I'm hearing in this build-up. Yeah, but can we, like, seriously, are we forgetting what he did to Rampage Jackson? It's not that time anymore. That's all I'm going to say. It's just not. It's the time where he should have lost to Dominic Reyes. He almost lost to Thiago Santos, who had 1 leg after a few rounds of that fight. And he took Anthony Smith to a decision. And it's just not that time anymore. Okay? It's a different world. I really think that. And it's a different Jon Jones. Maybe. Just maybe. Jon Jones was bored of his defending of his title and his legacy. Maybe he was bored the whole time. Who knows? When he was so active. That's the problem. I don't know how Jones is bored when he's active and fighting over and over again. In fact, I think the layoffs are a sign that he's bored, to be honest with you. But it is true, when he does take some time off and come back, he does have more impressive performances normally. But who's he coming back against, though? That's the problem that I'm looking at here. Like, when he came back after some time off after the DC fight got overturned to a no contest, he came back against Alexander Gustafsson. The first 2 rounds, Jones outstruck Gustafsson. You know what I mean? The second round, he clearly outstruck Gustafsson. 3rd round, he landed a big groin shot. Let's not forget about that. But Gustafsson stuffed 4 takedowns of Jones in the early rounds of that fight. And that's a Gustafsson who, at this point, you know, didn't look too good in his recent fights afterwards. And he didn't look in great shape for that fight either, compared to the Gustafsson that showed up in the first fight against Jon Jones. But eventually he got taken down in round 3, and Jones beat him up on the ground, and Gus just sort of shelled up and did nothing and accepted it. He did the same thing to Anthony Smith the very fight afterwards, I do believe. I'm just going to look it up now. Alexander Gustafsson, after losing to Jon Jones, fought Anthony Smith, was winning, was doing good against Anthony Smith, got taken down once in that fight by Anthony Smith, or just ended up sort of toppling backwards in that fight and ending up on the ground in that fight. Smith ends up on top, and Gus just shells up and didn't do anything to escape that position. I feel like it was like a defeatist Gustafsson that we were witnessing in that time. And then after that as well, you got to consider, like, what happened. You know, Jones got on top of Gustafsson and dominated him. Verdum took him down, immediately subbed him in their fight. And that wasn't a good-looking Verdum either. You know, Krylov just smoked him after that as well. Just smoked him. I'm going to go with Ciryl Gane. I think the range is going to be a problem for Jones. I know he has a reach advantage. Jones has, like, a massive reach advantage over Dominic Reyes. Man, he was getting hit by rear uppercuts as he was coming in. Getting hit by rear uppercuts from Dominic Reyes. Reyes was slamming body kicks onto him, chopping at his legs. And I want to talk about this as well. Gane is very calm and he moves very well. I don't know if you guys have rewatched the Reyes fight recently, but you can see the nervous energy in Reyes in round 1. It's almost like he's full of adrenaline, and he's got like sporadic psycho energy in round 1. He's just moving around, like crazy. Normally Reyes is calm, patient, unless they're really pressuring him. He's very calm and patient. But against Jon Jones, he was so sporadic against Jon Jones. He was moving around like herky-jerky all over the place. Kick, punch, kick, swing, like just going crazy on him. I think Gane is way more patient than that. I think he'll pick his shots way better. And Jones couldn't take down Reyes and do anything with him on the ground. And Reyes don't really have that level of grappling background either. I know there's been this talk about Gane not training for fights. That was apparently just for his earlier fights before the Ngannou fight. That's been clarified by this point. And also, when you talk about that with Ciryl Gane, he only trains when he has a training camp coming up before the Ngannou fight. He always had a training camp coming up. That's the thing with Ciryl Gane. So that quote from him is kind of like, who cares? You know what I mean? Because he fought in August 2019, October 2019, December 2019. Then he had a year because the whole world went to shit. Fair enough. December 2020, February 2021, June 2021, August 2021, January 2022. So he just kept fighting. So it's not like, he took so much time off between training camps. He always had a training camp. So he was always training anyway. I think he wins this. I think he does. And I know Ngannou took him down. But Ngannou is a different level athlete than Jon Jones. Jon Jones might run faster. Ngannou is a different type of colossal mass. And I really highly doubt Ciryl Gane was preparing grappling for that matchup. I really highly doubt that. He'll be preparing grappling for this one. I think he will. And he's very technical. He's always improving. He's young, 31 years of age. Jon Jones is 35, and you can see it in his face. He's aging rapidly from the source, maybe, who knows. And those skinny toothpick legs. I don't pick against Jon Jones. I think I only picked Gustafsson in a rematch the last time he took time off. So maybe my time off Jones picks are wrong. Who knows? That's the only time I've ever picked against him, I think. But those toothpick legs are still there. I think Gane's going to chop at them. And I think they're going to bug Jones early on. Big, heavyweight legs of Gane. Big calves. Chop early on. Right on his leg. Move, jab, move. Feinting at range. Teep to the body. Move. Jones shoots. Gane is strong in the clinch early. That's something a lot of people need to consider as well. He only got taken down by Ngannou later on in that fight. And Jones often doesn't shoot until later on. So even though Jones is he's good and he can grapple, I don't think he shoots in the first round. I don't think he does. He rarely ever gets a takedown off in the first round. He normally just throws a couple, feels them out, sees how strong they are. And then in round 3, 4, and 5, he starts looking for some takedowns for real. I don't think he's going to have that opportunity against Gane. I think Gane's going to chew up his leg, chop at him pretty good. I don't think he has to worry about Jones's power. I think that was a massive thing holding him back in the Ngannou fight. He was so terrified of being switched off by that one big punch. You know how it is with Ngannou. I think Jones would be the same way, just panicking and moving and not really wanting to commit to anything. And Jones, when does he just keep someone on the end of his jab and stuff? He's good and he's a physical freak and he's got long arms at light heavyweight. But I think moving up to heavyweight, he loses a lot of the things that made him great at light heavy. So I'm going to side with Ciryl Gane. If he gets taken down and immediately destroyed by Jones, I'm going to be very sad about it. And if he just dives for a leg after Jones takes him down and just gives up position, I'll be very annoyed at Ciryl Gane. But I've got to pick him here. I think he's going to give Jones some problems. We never seen a guy who can really threaten Jones with head kicks. You know what I mean? Front kicks to the face, teeps to the body kicks like that. We don't see people being able to do that with Jones. Santos was giving him problems, man. If it's the same Jones that we've seen recently, he gets smoked by Gane. If it's even a slightly better version of that Jones, it's a close fight, but I'm leaning towards Ciryl Gane by decision. If if he's just a different beast and a different monster entirely, he'll probably win. We'll have to see. But I think Gane's working on his takedown defense, and he's going to carry that into this fight. I think both of them are going to be about 250 on the scale. And I think Jones's weight ain't that good compared to Gane. Gane is a natural heavyweight guy. Natural heavyweight guy, and he's used to carrying around that weight. Jones has been out for a very long time. Remember, this ain't just a short time off for John Jones. You know what I mean? This ain't fighting DC 2017 and then coming back in 2018 against Gustafsson. He hasn't fought since February 2020. Over 3 years off. This ain't like, Jones, when he comes back, is always better. What? With his 11-month hiatus? 11 months? That's not really much time off. Some champions defend once a year. You know? 3 years off. Gane's been active. I don't know. I got Gane winning this one. Decision. 49-46. One judge will give it to Jones maybe, but I got Gane winning. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Toodle pip. I'll see you later. Goodbye. Yeah.